It is a pleasure to stand before you today as I share a story, my story, and how it intertwines with the future of our nation. You see, as I reflect on my journey, I remember a little girl filled with dreams, but also shackled by fear. Fear of failure, fear of disappointing my parents, fear that I just might not be good enough. As I grew, I grappled with an important question. What must I do to succeed? I had seen success in my father, but trust me, I felt even more threatened and terrified by my father's success because of his achievements. But I also wondered, my father would always say to me, a lion does not give birth to a goat. It was his way of reminding me that the potential for greatness lied within me, and I had what it takes to succeed. Yet I struggled with those internal doubts. It wasn't until I embraced this truth and began to take action that my life started to change. Here, the Newton's first law of motion comes to mind. An object at rest will remain at rest except an external force is acted upon it. I realized that I needed to take action to push against the inertia of self-doubt. This is my story, and it may be the story for most of us seated here. It may be the story for a great percentage, or a little percentage rather, of our population. However, this is not the story for a greater percentage of the Nigerian people, especially those in rural areas. This reality is very different for them. They face a heavy burden of malnutrition, little access to health care, and a daily fight for survival. These are the people who should be helping to grow our economy, but they are held back by malnutrition. Just as doubt can hold back an individual, malnutrition can hold back nations. How many of us here have seen children in our neighborhoods, in our communities, children with hollow cheeks, lean feet, quite fragile for their age, children whose laughter echoes, but whose potential remains stunted? According to a UNICEF report, in Nigeria, we have about 37% of children who are stunted, meaning they are chronically malnourished and too small for their age. These aren't just numbers. These are lives. Children who may never reach their full potential. Poor nutrition doesn't just stunt their growth, it limits their future. But it doesn't even stop here. When we talk about malnutrition, we're not just discussing about food, like we may think. We're discussing about the very fabric of our society. We are talking about the loss of dreams, the silencing of potentials, and the weakening of our workforce. Essentially, malnutrition and malnourished children today become less productive adults tomorrow, trapped in a cycle of poverty and despair. What does this mean for us as a nation? Let's think of this as an equation. If we want a productive workforce, if we want to nurture a prosperous economy, we must invest in nutrition and health. The link between nutrition, productivity, and economic prosperity is not just a theory. It is a well-established fact. In fact, the World Bank report reveals that for every dollar spent on nutrition, we see a return on investment of $16. Let me put this into perspective. For every $1 you spend on infrastructure, you see a return on investment of $5. This data challenges us to reconsider where we place our investments. The question here is, are we paving the pathway to prosperity for our nation? Well, I would like to say that we need to think about what we must do. So what must we do? We must prioritize nutrition in our policies, in our neighborhoods, in our communities, through a multi-sectoral coordinated approach and collaboration. I mean, it is an all-of-government, all-of-society approach to ensure resources reaches those who need it the most, especially our women and our children. If we must overcome self-doubt that holds individuals back, if we must address malnutrition that holds the potential of an entire nation, if we must break the cycle of poverty, lift millions out of hunger, and build a more productive society, then, distinguished ladies and gentlemen, we must take a decisive decision. We must take a decisive action, an action that bridges unrealized potentials and true progress for a nation. But to do all this, and I must say to do all this, we must will. And to will, we must develop a courageous spirit that calls for action. A courageous spirit that dares the impossible. A courageous spirit that hates procrastination and considers idleness as the greatest evil of mankind. The spirit that inspires great individuals, great achievers, and great nations. When this spirit is within us, and again I say, when this spirit is in us, what we once felt was impossible becomes possible. With this spirit, dreams can now be realized and potentials fulfilled. Thank you.